And that's, cuss, the world out. But no, I mean, I still haven't found that grief yet. I mean, I still kind of mourn. It's going to take one more week before we bury my daughter. We were there about 45 minutes, till we got the call that my daughter was actually on her way to the hospital or at the hospital. After we found out she was passed, I promised, her death wasn't going to be in vain, or not just her, everybody else's death.
Sadness turning to anger in Uvalde, Texas tonight. New questions emerging about the police response to the massacre that happened at Robb Elementary School. Here is what we know at this hour. The shooter entered that school at 11:40 in the morning on Tuesday. Minutes later, police followed, and they took cover after the gunman opened fire. About an hour later, a border agent entered the school and killed the gunman. 1 hour. That is the length of this news program. A lot happens in an hour. Today would have been the last day of school for the 19 children and 2 teachers who were killed this week. Instead, funerals are being prepared for the faces you see on your screen. Parents are now left asking, how did this happen? And what could have been done to prevent it? And what are we going to do to stop it from happening again? I want to thank you for joining us for our continuing coverage tonight. I'm Marnie Hughes, joining you live from Chicago. My colleague, Leland Vittert, is on the ground live in Uvalde, Texas tonight once again. Leland, the focus right now is on finding answers for these families. And the major points right now that surround the investigation are conflicting chain of events. What was happening in that 1 hour after the gunman went into the school, and understanding law enforcement's response. We're learning some tonight, but we still have a lot of questions.
Sure, there's an enormous number of unanswered questions, and you rightly pointed out 60 minutes, which is about the time from when police initially got here and realized that there was a gunman that had headed into the school, and the gunman started shooting at police. 60 minutes until he died, as you said about the length of this television program. And a lot does happen, and we focused rightly on the video that you saw of a number of parents distraught. They showed up here and realized that police had not gone in. They were still hearing gunfire. We don't know when this particular video was taken, but we know that there were parents here begging police to do more, offering to go in themselves, which obviously is something that police could not allow them to do. But we also don't know what else was happening during those 60 minutes. Were there police officers inside going room to room? We know there were police officers and Border Patrol agents and sheriff's deputies and anybody with a gun and a badge who answered the call evacuating students out of other classrooms. We know they were taking fire from the gunman. We know they at least once attempted to get into the classroom. At one point, they were beaten back by gunfire when they tried to enter from the door to the classroom. We know the door was locked and they didn't have a key, so they had to go back out and find somebody with a key. So there's an enormous number of unanswered questions about this timeline, and the anger by these parents is understandable. The first one that you heard from, he was one of the ones, Javier was one of the ones who said, I want to go in. His daughter, as you heard, died. There is a chance, because she was taken to the hospital, that she could have actually survived this had police been able to go in sooner. Marnie.
Well, and the other thing, Leland, is, the police have a difficult job in trying to piece together lots of different witness accounts, and some have changed since the beginning of the investigation. But the heartbreaking fact of the matter is many of the witnesses are those who were shot, and children who are in the hospital, and other staff members. And so they're going to have to wait to get some of the answers before some of these people, these kids, second, third, and fourth graders, can share what they saw, what they knew. And that's going to be critical as we understand what was happening behind that door.
Sure, and there were a couple of fourth graders who did survive, especially those in what was the adjoining classroom. One played dead. lying on top of her bleeding classmate. The stories of that survival are horrific, and you understand these children will never ever be the same. There's a lot of videotape. There's a lot of radio calls. There's an enormous amount of evidence, hundreds and hundreds of hours worth of evidence to go through to answer the questions we've talked about. Going back just for a moment to the human toll here and the families that no longer have a loved one, have a child at home tonight. Ran into one father, his daughter Jacqueline died in a unique position as he came here and realized at the hospital he did not have a daughter. Take a listen. You've got a son in the Marines who's protecting America, and every parent who has a child in the service knows that that phone call can come, that knock on the door can come. You accept that. You don't accept that when you send your fourth grader to school.
No, not at all. I mean, she was excited for the summer to come, you know. What
were you guys going to do?
You know, we were planning on going to Austin. You know, my older niece was graduating from high school, and that was our trip. You know, my daughter just had her first communion, and she was happy to print out pictures and write thank you notes to my family that was there. So that was the plan, you know. And she loved to go shopping. She we were gonna just make it a little small, you know, four-day weekend vacation type of thing. And she was excited, you know, happy-go-lucky little girl, full of life and love, and you know, and just a little firecracker, you know, smart, passionate, you know. You know, she was sad, and she told me, like, I just told her 2 more days of school, right, baby girl? She's like, yeah, but it's sad, and I'm not gonna be able to see my friends. Like, you guys talk all day long, you know, on the phone, and happened to be all her little best friends, man. They all passed too, and her little cousin, you know. It's just sad and it's angry, you know. You're so many mixed emotions that, you know, it's hard.
How do you go on in a town where your daughter's gone, her friends are gone, but then some of your relatives and some of her cousins and so many of these other families still have their children?
I mean, we gotta take it one day at a time, and it's gonna be hard. I mean, when do you? I mean, I've lost, you know, a nephew just not too long ago, my brother's son, and we've had, but in different situations. But this is, how do you stop grieving with the loss of a child? It's hard. You know, it's so young.
It's impossible. This is Javier's daughter, Jacqueline. I asked him for a picture. And it said, Javier, can you please text me a picture of Jacqueline? We want to honor him. And he pulled a picture up on his phone from Facebook, and he said, I don't know how to text a picture. That's what I would ask her to do. So, Marnie, we were able to take a picture of the picture, and it is indicative of how so many families are going to have to change their lives on a almost minute-by-minute basis for the rest of their lives.
Yeah, and Leland, you said something that stuck with me last night is, you know, in the 48 hours after something like this, the loss of a child, which you can't even begin to comprehend, the mind can't really process it. It's later that it sets in and it feels real. Today would have been the last day of school for Jacqueline, for all of her classmates. I picture that last day of school as a, you know, second, third, fourth grader, as signing yearbooks, talking about what you're going to do for your summer plans, maybe having a class party, somebody brings in some treats. I mean, that was what today was supposed to be, and instead, these parents are getting ready for funerals. It just, it leaves you without words, the grief. And we're looking at these little crosses outside Robb Elementary. Leland, I know people feel helpless right now, and a lot of people have come to that community to try to help, lay flowers if that's the least they can do.
Yeah, people have come from all over. And you rightly point out that when you actually think about what has happened and what happened in the building behind me and the long-lasting, the lifetime effects of that, it becomes very emotional very quickly, and you lose words, because losing a child for a parent is something that's not supposed to happen. That's not how humans are designed to cope and to deal with things. And it's probably one of the reasons that we so quickly move on to these other issues, be it why did the shooter do it, or could the police have responded sooner, or what is the timeline, and all these other things, because these very deeply emotional things are too difficult to process.
Yeah. Well, Leland, I know you've got a team there helping, and it's one thing, as I've said time and time again, watching these images on screen, hearing these parents now sharing their stories. It's a much different thing to be there and to witness it, and to be a shoulder for them to lean on and a hug that they need so desperately.
In a way, it is an honor to be able to tell their stories and to be able to tell their loved ones' stories. And then we leave. And they must go on with their lives. In a community of 16,000 people, it'll be very different than any kind of school shooting and tragedy that we've covered in modern times. I wanted to go a little bit more into the investigation here. And in a way, very clearly, the Texas Department of Public Safety is playing defense right now in terms of the response and talking about what happened in those 60 minutes. Listen to a little bit from the press conference, Marnie, that we talked about earlier.
So during that time that they're making those calls to bring in help to solve this problem and stop it immediately, they're also evacuating personnel. When I say personnel, students, teachers. There's a lot going on. A lot complex situation. They're measuring.
Complicated, chaotic. We could think of 1,000 adjectives. Robert Sherman with me. You were one of the first reporters on the scene within the first couple of hours. There were calls of another shooter at the high school during the time that police were trying to figure out what to deal with here. Didn't know how many shooters there were. Originally, it came in as a car chase. Describe for us those first couple of hours in this town.
Well, it was very frantic, and that was not just on the perspective from law enforcement, but of people in the community as well. There was just a flurry of information going around, and folks didn't know what to make of it, what was true, what was not. For the people, for the families that were here, they didn't know if their loved ones were okay or not. They didn't know who was in the building or who was able to get out safely. In terms of the investigation itself, we started to hear misinformation right from the get-go. Whether it was the school resource officer or someone engaging the shooter before going in, or whether it was, even the count of confirmed fluctuated at times in the wrong direction, and it was hard to navigate through all of that.
The fog of war is very real, and you point out it took 48 hours for the Texas Rangers to clear up that there was no school resource officer. They never returned fire. The gunman was able to get into the school through an unlocked door without ever being confronted. Brian Enton earlier today pressing the Texas Rangers and the Texas Department of Public Safety on whether more officers should have gone in quicker.
Based on the information you have so far, sir, should the officers have gone in sooner? Should they have waited for those tactical teams, or should they have gone right in?
That's a tough question. Again, it goes back. Our job is to report the facts. And later we can answer those questions.
Based on what you know so far, should those officers have...
I don't have enough information to answer that question just yet.
We live in a world where we want everything to be known instantaneously. What are the couple key facts that, as Texas DPS pointed out, we don't have, that you'll be looking for?
Well, of course, with the investigation as well, one of the other big questions that was asked in that press conference, people are talking about a barricade and the inability to go in. What does barricade mean? What does that mean that they couldn't go into the building? You also heard from Texas DPS earlier today that when law enforcement first went in, they started calling for very specific things. A tactical unit, which we know did arrive, but also calling for marksmen, negotiators. That's another one. So what was law enforcement? What was their perspective of the situation in those first few moments? You call it fog of war as well. Certainly, nobody knew precisely what was going on, but it'll be very interesting to know what was going through the minds of those officers at that time. And what situation did they think they were going into compared to what we now know it was?
Yeah, and what was their plan to deal with those various situations? And I know when you just got here, there were still parents here. There were still parents frantic to figure out whether or not their kids were okay, whether their kids were at the hospital, whether their kids didn't make it. back now to Jacqueline's dad, who was one of the ones who was here even before the gunman was killed, saying that as he stood there, he certainly would have done a lot more than what was done during those 60 minutes. Take a listen.
As soon as they heard the gunfire, they should have rushed in. You know, that didn't happen. You know, more policemen came in increments. They were there unprepared. You know, they should have had shields in the cars. They should have had, you know, flag. You know.
Do you think they were unprepared, or were they cowardly? Were they disorganized?
I say all three. Honestly, in my opinion.
Yeah, that it's not their fault, it's their commanders and the higher-ups, he said, which at some level goes to the issue of who was in command when everyone arrived. Was it a couple of Uvalde police officers who had training in active shooters, which every police department gets, but not like big cities? You made the point about barricades. We've learned over and over again in active shooters, lockdown, lockdown, lockdown. Means you lock all the doors. Means that once doors are locked, it's hard to unlock them. It feels like we're going to a place where the locked door allowed the shooter to turn that classroom into his own shooting gallery until police could find the one person who had the key.
Right, and that is the big question. You know, why did it take that long, and why was that the obstacle that could not be overcome? And of course, you know, there are still more details that we're waiting for of what was going on during those 60 minutes. That's going to be the key of this whole investigation. They said that they were trying to get children out of the school and trying to save as many lives as possible. But what happened behind that classroom door in the 60 minutes, that's what frustrates.
What happened in those 60 minutes? What went right? What went wrong? And Marnie, I think there's really an important point to make here of what went right during those 60 minutes, of the number of children that were evacuated out, the people who ran towards the sound of gunfire. And then there's this big question of whether the law of unintended consequences is now set in here in Uvalde as it relates to locked doors and the inability of police to open them.
Thanks for watching. Click the red subscribe button below so you can get more of NewsNation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.